Hey everyone, this is Tony Teaches Tech. I'm Tony, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set up WordPress Multisite on an Nginx web server. Now, in case you're using Apache, I do have another separate video for that. There are some differences there as far as your configuration files are concerned. But if you're here for Nginx, let's go ahead and get on into the tutorial here. All right, so because there are two different ways that you can set up multi-site on WordPress, I have two websites here. So I have site3.xyz, which has a default install of WordPress, and site4.xyz, which same thing has a default install of WordPress. This one I called Blueberry, and Site3 I called Orange. So the two different ways that you can set up WordPress on or a multi-site WordPress install is in a subdirectory or a subdomain. So a subdirectory would be like site4.xyz/pi, right? And then a subdomain would be valencia.site3.xyz. Okay, so those are the two different ways. And the reason I'm doing them both in one tutorial is because most of this process is similar to each other, whether you're doing subdomain or subdirectory, but there are some subtle differences which I will point out along the way and show you what those differences are. So let's go ahead and start by enabling the ability to even set up a multi-site on WordPress. And to do that, we have to edit our wp-config.php file. And in order to do that, you need either SSH access to your server or FTP access to your server. So I'm going to be using SSH access in this case, but we're going to edit the same file. So regardless of which way you choose, it's going to be the same exact thing. So let me just show you what the WordPress admin dashboard looks like. So specifically, we want to look at the tools menu here, and this is what the tools menu looks like without the network, I should say without WordPress multi-site installation enabled. So you see available tools, import, export, site health, export personal data, and erase personal data. Now, the configuration change we're going to make here is going to add an additional menu item. So here I have a SSH session root at site3.xyz. So I'm logged into the server here, and I can edit the configuration file that we need to edit to make that change. So that's going to be at var www. Actually, it's WordPress, and then here, let me just show you. Let's go into that directory, cd var www WordPress. In here is just the basic installation files for WordPress. And the file we want to edit is wp-config.php. So let's go ahead and edit that. And all at the bottom here, right above, that's all. Stop editing, happy publishing. We want to put one line of PHP code, which looks like this. WP allow multi-site true. Okay, so when we save this file, the changes take effect immediately. There's nothing else we have to do except come back in here. Remember, this is what the menu looks like before. We'll refresh the page, and now we see the network setup option, which is going to allow us to create a multi-site installation. So let's go ahead and do that. And for site 3, and this is a very good point, I always fall into this trap, we want to make sure we deactivate all of our plugins in order to do multi-site. So let's go, and honestly, these plugins aren't really going to interfere with anything. That's the reason that they want you to deactivate them. But just for good practice, let's deactivate all of our plugins. And then there's one other thing. It's not, your mileage may vary, but I recommend having post name permalink structure, not only for SEO purposes, but just so that nothing goes weird with the installation. So let's make that change as well. And now we can go back into Tools, Network Setup, and we have the choice, like I was talking about, between doing a subdomain install or a subdirectory install. So for this site, site3.xyz, let's do a subdomain install. And I try not to confuse you, but over here I went through all the steps prior to this on site4.xyz. So I do have that menu option over here, network setup. Here, let's do a subdirectory network install for site 4. Okay, so the one extra piece of information that we need for a subdomain install that's exclusive to that, and we don't need to worry about this for a subdirectory install, is we want to make sure that our DNS settings for site3.xyz have a wildcard A record. Okay, so let me show you exactly what that means. I bought the domain name site3.xyz from namecheap.com. Now, you might have bought yours from somewhere else, like GoDaddy or DreamHost or some of those other domain name registrars, but I bought mine from Namecheap. Regardless of where you bought yours from, you have to go into the DNS settings for that domain name and simply add an A record that has the wildcard character, this asterisk here, that also has the value of your IP address of your web server. So typically you'll have an A record in here that is for the naked domain name, which is this @ symbol here at that IP address. The only extra step you have to take is add that wildcard, and that's going to support basically star.yourdomainname.com. Okay, in my case, it's star.site3.xyz. Okay, so as long as you make that change, because otherwise you might run into an issue. You will run into an issue when you click on the next step here to install, because what WordPress is going to do when we click on install is to make sure that it can actually interact with the DNS records for your subdomains. So because that's all in place, I can click on install here, and that looks good. Again, this was for the subdirectory install. And if you're here for, sorry, I probably just confused you. This was for the subdomain install. Trying not to confuse you, site4.xyz, this is for the subdirectory install. So let's click on that. There's no extra DNS changes or anything because we're not affecting that. Click on install. And it looks pretty similar, right? So site 3, we have, the next step is to edit our wp-config.php file. Which we already are familiar with that. So we just want to copy these 6 definitions, these PHP items here, and open up our wp-config file again, paste those on in there and save it. And if you look real closely here, subdomain install is true for the subdomain install, right? And then if you go over here, subdomain install is false for site4.xyz. So let's go ahead and in parallel make those changes. So if we go to var www WordPress wp-config.php, and like I said, I was already in here prior to the video. I added the wp allow multisite install in here, and I'll just paste those in there as well. Now, the reason I have a separate video here for Nginx than Apache is because there are additional Nginx level configurations that we have to make for both subdomain and subdirectory installs so that everything is in place for Nginx to be able to serve the subdomains and the subdirectories. So let's do them one at a time. Let's do the subdomain first, and this one's the easier one of the two. So for your Nginx configuration file, which is typically located at etc Nginx sites available, and I don't know what your particular configuration file is called, but for me it's called WordPress. In here, this is your standard Nginx configuration file. The only change we want to make for subdomain multi-site WordPress installs is to add that wildcard domain name as in the server name directive here. So star.site3.xyz for me, it'll be something similar, star.yourdomainname.com for you. Okay, so we'll save that change over here, and we'll do a system ctl restart or reload Nginx. That looks good. Moving along to the subdirectory install for WordPress Multisite on Nginx. In order to make sure Nginx plays well with WordPress Multisite, we would also want to edit the etc Nginx sites available configuration file. Again, this one's called WordPress for me. It might be something different for you. And in here, we basically want to add a block of code, right? And that's why it's a little bit slightly more complicated here. So, you can add that wherever you want. I'm going to add it right after the index. And this says rewrite. Basically, we're rewriting requests to wp- and that could be admin, login, whatever, anything on subdirectory install. So these rewrite rules handle those particular cases. And we won't go through what this actually means, but this is unfortunately WordPress. I think maybe if you dig in these documentations here, which actually goes to wordpress.org, you might be able to find these references, but I think it's hard because the documentation on WordPress might not be up to date, and then there's information offsite. So this is what worked for me, these rewrite rules here. Okay, so let's save that. Same thing, system ctl restart or reload Nginx. All right, so we're good to go. In both cases, we're going to have to log back in. So let me go ahead and do that. And log in here. All right, now at this point in the tutorial, pretty much every step is going to be similar for subdomain installs and subdirectory installs. Really, the only difference is going to be how we actually one small step when we add in our sub sites. I'm not sure what the correct terminology is, but our multiple, like our individual sites under this domain name. So let me just show you that right off the bat, and then we'll just focus in on one of these. So you'll notice we know we're using a WordPress multi-site install now because we see this extra option here at the top, My Sites, and we see the network admin option here. So under network admin, let's just see what that looks like. We have one site and one user. If we want to add another site, we can go to sites and either add site, or I'm sorry, add new, or we can click here, look at our sites first, and then click on add new. So for a subdomain install, you'll see that we're going to pick something.site3.xyz. And similarly, but this is the difference that I want to point out. If we add a new site on a subdirectory install, it'll be site4.xyz/something. Okay, so that is, from this point forward, pretty much the only difference that you're going to run into between adding new sites to your WordPress multi-site install. So let's just focus on the subdomain option here. And what we can do is add a subdomain. So let's go ahead and do Valencia.site3.xyz. My site title is going to be Valencia Oranges, or I'll just call it a Valencia Orange. And then my admin email. You can either choose the same network administrator here, or you can pick somebody else. So I'm going to pick somebody else. I'm going to make a new user, essentially, Tony@swampview.com. This is going to be the administrator for the Valencia Orange site. So we'll add that. And there we go. So let's look at the dashboard. And, typically, if you have your email settings set up correctly on your server, this should automatically send out an email to that user with their credentials to log in. But if that's not the case, you can come into network admin, look at your sites. You'll see your new site here, valencia.site3.xyz. You can edit that, go into users. You'll see that new user that was created, and simply it says a password reset link will be sent to the user via email. But if we actually edit that user, we can set a password for them and communicate to that password to them if you need to. So just so we don't have to deal with the email in this case, let's go ahead and set that password for this user. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you the difference between the network admin and the admin for the actual multi-site site. Okay, so let me open up a new window here. We'll put these side by side, and let's go to Valencia.site3.xyz, and just let's look at it real quick. That's what it looks like. And then we can go to /wp-admin to log in. And now we're going to log in as a new user. So the username is Valencia, and the password is on my clipboard. So I'll log in here, and that looks good. So over here on the left, again, just so we're all on the same page, this is the admin for all of the websites. Okay, they're in control of a lot of different things, plugins, themes, and we'll go through some of these next. And this is logged in as the admin for the individual multi-site site. So right now, if we know what the website looks like right here. So it looks like this. If we want to change the theme, we can go to Appearance Themes, but there is only one theme to choose from at this point, 2021. Now, it's up to the network admin over here on the left-hand side to either, to give the individual sites the ability to install certain themes. So this individual sites can't just go out and download any theme. It has to be approved by the network admin. So we can enable the 2020 theme as well and come over here and refresh, and we'll see that is an option here. You can do the enable 2019 refresh, same thing. And typically, if you're familiar with WordPress, you can add really any theme at the network level and enable it for the individual sites to be able to apply to their site. So this way, if you want all your websites to look the same, then the network admin has that power to restrict the theme to whatever he wants. But if you want them all to look different, have their own look and feel, then you can do that as well. So let's just change this for the sake of demonstration, the individual site over here to 2020 theme. So now we have the valencia.site3.xyz looking like this. And over here, if we go to just regular site3.xyz, that's running the 2021 theme, but they're part of the same multi-site network. Okay, so similarly with plugins, if we go to plugins over here, you'll see that we have the option to activate them for the network. Over here, we don't see any references to plugins, right? So, and it really varies from plugin to plugin. Like if we network activate Dolly, we're not going to see really anything happen over here. The one demonstration that I think is good, if we go to the posts and we try to edit this post, you'll see that the classic block editor is, or not the, that was confusing. The Gutenberg block editor is the default editor here, but at the network level, if we install the classic editor and activate that, and it's activated for the entire network, and we refresh this, we'll see that it reverts back to the classic editor. Now, we can actually give the users the ability to, the site admins, the ability to control their plugins, and we can do that in my site's network admin settings. And I always forget where this is. Default. So this is kind of relevant because we're talking about the editor. But let's first enable the administration menu. So for plugins. So let's save that. And once we do that at the network level, when we refresh the page, we'll see that we now have the plugins option over here. And like I was saying, not every plugin is network compatible. I think one that might be, let's just try it out. I think Contact Form 7. If we install that at the network level and activate it for the network, if we refresh this, maybe we'll it doesn't show up in the plugins list, but it does show up over here that the individual sites can add a contact form to their site. So yeah, it just depends on what your what plugin we're talking about here. Now, at this point, there's one other thing I want to talk about. It's the fact that the administrator for the network is in charge of creating new sites at this point. You do have the option to set this up so anybody can, like the public, can come in and create a new site. If that's something you're interested in, there's obviously pros and cons with that. But we can do that. We can enable that functionality by going to network admin settings again. And here it says under registration settings, allow new registrations. So basically, both sites and user accounts can be registered. If we click that, and before I save it, I just want to show you what the default is. So if I log out of here and I just go to site3.xyz/wp-admin, this is what that looks like, right? So you can log in if you have credentials, or if you lost your password, you can do that. But that's all there really is. But if we enable, like I was saying, both site and user accounts to be registered at the network level, and we refresh this page, we'll see now that we have this register option here. So when you click on that, you'll be able to get your own Orange Sites account, right? So first you have to create a user. So let's say, what's another good Orange? Valencia Naval. That's how you spell it. We'll say Tony at TonyFlorida.com. And do you just want to create the user? Do you also want a site? We want a site, so click next. And now you can pick your subdomain. I'll keep naval.site3.xyz, and I'll call this naval orange. Is it an E? This is really off topic. Is it naval orange? It's an EL. Okay. NAVEL, naval.site3.xyz. Okay. It'll sign up for that. And at this point, again, if your email settings are correctly configured on your server, then this will send an email to Tony@tonyflorida.com, and he can go ahead and activate the website and log into his account and start creating it based on the rules and restrictions that the network admin has set up for the multi-site. So yeah, I think that's all I want to talk about. I have a blog post that has the code snippets from the beginning for the Nginx configuration if you guys are interested in checking that out. If you got value out of this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe to this channel. Got plenty more videos like this to come, and particularly adding SSL to this whole multi-site network setup, which I'll link that video up here. Let me know if you have any questions. Please subscribe like I just said, and I'll see you in the next one.